Hello and welcome to my studio. In this video I'm going to show you how I made this picture. Macro photography can be a bit of a challenge, but with the right techniques and attention to detail in the lighting, it's possible to produce good results. This image was lit entirely with just small LED continuous lights. And in this video I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. Okay, so the first thing to do is just to set up a little stage that you can put your subject on. And I find it easier to use something like this. This is just a retort stand, and on here I've just got a clamp, and in the clamp I've just put a piece of wood. This means that I can alter the orientation of this and move the whole thing around relatively easily. Okay, so for the subject I'm just going to use some raspberries, and one raspberry in particular I've already placed a dead fly on that I found outside. So that's going to be my main subject. And I'm just going to put a few others round just to fill in the space really. We'll probably need to alter the orientation of these as we go along, just to make it a little more interesting. But you get the idea. Something like that. And then once all this is set, this whole thing can just be moved around as one piece, which will make it easy to get this in the correct position. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to need is some form of lighting. Now, lighting for macro can be quite a challenge. I'm going to use an Adaptalux LED starter pack, which consists of a power unit which has magnetic connections on the front of it, and a rechargeable battery, and a couple of LEDs which are mounted on these very flexible goosenecks. Now the LEDs themselves are very small. Now that gives you a bit of an advantage for lighting macro because you can easily get this very close in and it will still give you a point light source. I'll come back to that in a bit. Now besides that, you can also have various attachments, and this is just a very small softbox which can attach magnetically to the end of the stalk here. And these just attach to the power unit like so, and as soon as you attach them, they turn on. Now, as with a lot of things these days, all this can be controlled from an app on your phone. So I'll just start up the app, and now I have the app all started. I can just select the light, and then I can alter the brightness from the control in the app. It's all very handy. And obviously, as you add more lights, you can do the same to the others. And on this particular unit, you can add up to 5 of these gooseneck stalks with LEDs on the end of them. So then you can have individual control of each light. So if we just put them both on about 50% for now. There we go. And now I can just maneuver these to get them into something like the correct lighting position. And it's fairly simple, just to bend them round and get them relatively close in. So what I want to do is just have a little bit of backlighting here. Something like that. Okay, so that's just a guess for now. So what I'm going to do is just turn these off using the app, and we'll come back to those a little bit later. So the next thing to do will be to set up the camera. Now again, with macro photography such as this, it's quite important to have a very steady platform to put your camera on. So I'm using this tripod which has a geared head, so I have a lot of control over exactly how I can point the camera. and it also has a geared center column. So I can also easily control exactly the angle that I'm looking at the subject from. Okay, so I'm just going to place that right in front here, like so. And that brings me onto the camera. Now, I'm using a medium format camera with a 120mm macro lens on the front of it, and I also have a waist level finder on the top. Now, the equivalent of this, if you're using a full frame camera, would be something like a 75mm macro lens. Okay, so I'm just going to place this on the top of the tripod, like so. Now I'm going to use the camera tethered into Capture One software, so it's easy to follow the results as I get them. There we are, that's all on now. The other advantage of using a tethered system such as this is that you have complete control of the camera from the computer. So I can get rid of any of the vibrations that I might introduce by pressing the shutter on the camera, for instance, by using the shutter control on the computer. But I'll come back to that in a moment. Okay, so with this all being on, you can now see the controls that I've got on the camera on the computer here. So it's in full manual mode. At the moment I've got a shutter speed of 1/50th of a second, ISO 100, and the aperture is set at the moment to f8. Now that's quite likely to change, but it's a fairly reasonable starting point. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is just set up the shot. So to do that, I'll just look through the viewfinder and get the camera in something like the right starting position. So initially, I'm just going to wind this up on the center column to about there, I think. Could be a little high, we'll see how we go. Now just with the geared head, I'm just going to point it vaguely down at the subject. Just move that round a little. And we'll go for an initial focus, which I'll just do manually to start with. Now we'll just move the subject until it's in the correct position. So with that initially set up, the next thing to do would be just to grab an image and just see how much contamination with these settings I'm getting from the house lights. So what I'll do is just grab an image from here. So from this you can see that there is no image here to speak of, so I'm not actually getting any contamination from the house lights. So any light which I now add will be the only light which affects the subject. So at this point I can go back to the app, select those two heads one at a time and just turn it up. I'll turn it all the way up to 100%. There we go. They're going to need to be adjusted just to get them in exactly the right position. But I would think something like that may be a good starting point. Okay, so with that done, I can just grab an image now and we'll see what we get. Okay, well it's coming along, we're getting something. I think I need to increase the amount of light. This is a little dull as it is. So what I'm actually going to do is just wind up the ISO. I don't want to change the aperture just yet. So I'll just change the ISO from 100 to 400. So that will give me in effect 2 stops more. So we'll just grab that again and see what we get this time. There we are. That's starting to get there in terms of the exposure, but the composition needs a little adjustment, I think. And with this sort of macro setup, an easy way to do that is actually to use live view. So I'm just going to turn live view on here. And I'll just put that on full screen. If I turn the monitor slightly towards me, I can now see what I'm doing whilst I manipulate the subject. So I'm just going to turn it round ever so slightly, and you can see that I'm wandering in and out of focus. There we are. I'll set the focus properly a little later. There, I'm quite liking that, I think. Something around there. Now, as far as the lighting is concerned, I'm getting a bit of flare, as you can see at the top of the image there, which I can just blank out with my hand temporarily. And I think this backlight which I've got on here is possibly a little bright. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get rid of that flare. And the way I'm going to do that is just use a very small flag, just on this lab stand again, so I can just pop that on here and hopefully get it in just the right position, so it's just out of view of the picture. There. So that's got rid of the flare. Now the next thing I want to do is generally turn down this light at the back. So I can do that on the app here. So I think it's that one. There we go, we can just turn that down a little. You can see the effect as I do that. It's very handy. Okay, so with that all now done, I can come out of live view. We'll just grab another image. So this is beginning to get there. I think generally the subject is a little dark, so I just need to add a bit more light to the front face. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is actually move the light a little closer. So we'll just move that in just to make it a little brighter. And also, I think I'm just going to alter the aperture. I'm going to end up focus stacking this image anyway, so I think f8 will be too small an aperture. So what I'm going to do is just change that to 5.6. So with those two changes made, we'll grab another image and see what we get. Yes, that's much better. So that's brought up the head quite nicely here. So I'll just take this opportunity to zoom all the way in, and we'll have a little look at the focus point which we have at the moment. And it's not quite there. You can see that this is all a little bit out of focus. I think the focus point is around here somewhere. So it's fairly evident that the focus is going to have to change. And I'm going to set up focus stacking anyway to take a series of images at different focus points from the front of the subject to the back of the subject. Now this camera can do that automatically, and quite a few modern cameras, especially the mirrorless types, have that function built in. So let's just set that up. There we are, so I'll just move that along to the focus stack position. And with this in this position, what I can do is set a rear focus point. Now once again at this stage it's easier just to go into live view, so I'll get a better view of what's going on. So I'll just make that a bit bigger. We'll zoom into the subject, and now I can maneuver the focus just with the controls here. There we go, we can see it scanning across the body of the subject. There, and this is the back part of the image which I want to be in focus. So with that there, I can just select that, like so. And then with that selected, I can now move on to set the near focus point. So just move that in a little. Here we go. There, somewhere around there I think would do quite nicely. So once again, we just set that as the near point, like that. Now at the moment it's set to take 21 images, I think that won't be enough, so I'm going to set it to take 30 images. Okay, so with all that set, next thing that I want to do before I instigate that would be just to change the way the shutter and the mirror work in this camera. And again, you can do this on your own systems. So what I'm going to do is just get rid of live view, like so. Now I'm going to come down to shutter mode here. I'm going to change that from focal plane shutter to electronic shutter. So that will mean that the mirror will stay up, the shutter won't move, and the iris won't move either. So the only thing that will actually happen is that the sensor itself will act like a shutter. This will eliminate any vibration around here, which is exactly what you want. Okay, so with all that set, what we'll do is just start that off. So there we go, we now have a sequence of 30 images which all have a slightly different focus point. So if I now just go on to the last image which was collected, which is the front focus point, and we can just check that just by zooming all the way in. There we are. So all this is nice and sharp. And conversely, we can go right back to the very first image and just check that the back is sharp, which it obviously is. Okay, so that has captured a sequence of 30 images. So what I'm going to do now is just load all those into Helicon Focus so that I can stack them all together. I find that works a bit better than doing the stacking operation within Photoshop. So here we are in Helicon Focus 8. So the first thing to do is just to import all the images. Just go to File, Open Images, and bring them all in, just like that. So over here you can see this is the stack of images that I have. And at the moment I've got it set to do rendering method A, which will produce very smooth transitions, and I find this works quite well. Okay, so with all the images now loaded up, I can just hit the render button and it will get on and do that. There we are. So this is the resulting image. And I always find it easier just to go to Photoshop and open it up in there, just to have a good look around and see if there's anything else that I need to do to it. So here is that image opened up in Photoshop, and as you can see, it's very sharp. If I just zoom all the way into 1:1, move around the image slightly, you can see that we've got a ridiculous amount of detail in this image. There's one or two things that we do need to change. There's some debris here from the fly itself, and also an odd leg which seems to be sticking out of nowhere. Don't quite know where that's come from. So just to address those things, first of all I'll just have a look at this bit. And I think we can probably just get rid of that just with the patch tool. So that's in here somewhere. Here we are. And with this, you just draw around the bit that you don't want anymore. Which I will do like this. And just move to a different area. There we are. That's not made too bad a job. Needs a little bit of extra tidying up, which I can do just with the healing brush tool. So just hold down the Alt key to find a suitable place. Let's get rid of that. I just want to tidy up this very edge. So again, I'll just hold down the Alt key and just tidy that up. Same with this bit here. I think that can be done in a similar manner. Let's get rid of that. I'm doing this relatively quickly. You could take a bit more time, but you get the idea. So with those bits done, I'll just pan over the image a little See if there's anything we need to address on this side. There's a few bits of confusion here, so again, just hold down the Alt key to pick a particular part, and we'll just clone out those extra bits that we don't really need. There. Now I'll just zoom all the way out, and there we have it. So just with a few little lighting techniques which have been applied to the Adaptalux Studio System LED lights, I've been able to light this very small object quite successfully, I think. And I think overall that's turned out rather well. Okay, well I hope you like watching how I made that image, and if you like watching these sort of things, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Oh, and hit the like button. Thank you very much for watching.